QB chasing.
G'day, listeners. This episode is proudly brought to you by our major sponsor, Gym Journal. Please use the code MATTER, all capitals, at checkout, and you'll receive a discount on your next purchase. Please find the link in the description. G'day, listeners, and welcome back to another very, very special episode of the Matter Mentality Podcast, where we talk all things training, nutrition, and psychology to optimize your performance. Today, I am joined by a very special guest, and I've been excited for this one since we met 9 months ago now. I am joined by a doctor of physical therapy, former powerlifter, not most recent competitor in the 2023 Olympia, the 2023 women's physique champion, Chicago Pro, and a very, very, very world-renowned famous cookie baker, Dr. Dani LaMartina. Did I pronounce that properly? I've been trying to practice that. I'm like, I know I'm going to get this right.
It's weird when people call me doctor. I kind of forget that's a thing. You can just call me D. I'm really glad you hit the cookie baking part, because I feel like that's one of those gifts that, like, everyone has that like hidden talent. They go like, I had no idea you could do that. Yeah. Or like do it that well. Like, you told me you did a thing, I had no idea you were that good at it. That's me with cookies, I'm just saying.
Some people can play violin secretly, some people can sing
with their like toes or something. No, I just bake
world amazing cookies.
Accurate.
I feel like that's such a female, feminine trope that gets learned in prep, is like, I can't eat, so I'm going to bake for everyone, and all of a sudden I'm just going to start making cookies. Or
oh, totally. It's one of those things too, where it's like, I don't know if it's something about like nourishing other people or like caring for other people, or like, sort of like, I don't want to say like maternal instinct, because I wouldn't consider myself a maternal person at all, but that like caring of like, I have no words for you because I'm really tired, but I have cookies for you.
Yeah,
it's kind of like that. Like, when I don't have an energy, I have in cookies and chocolate chips.
I can't put into words how I feel right now, but cookies.
These are exactly. It's a love language.
What emotions I do have left have been baked into this, so here you go. Enjoy. That's
exactly what it is.
So, all right, this is going to be an interesting one, because we've had so many philosophical chats, conversations. Like, it's hard for me sometimes to speak with coaches or bodybuilders or what have you, because they're rarely vice versa. So this is going to be such a unique conversation, because we have someone at such an elite level of athletics in regard to bodybuilding, but also powerlifting. But we also have someone who is quite educated and very switched on with coaching and the philosophy you approach to helping people, but also then how you coach as well. You've kind of got this best of so many realms that makes you quite a unique athlete and perspective to talk with. It's something that I get to be myself, and I was sort of thinking about this the other day. Is a piece of content I put up yesterday was how powerful it is as a coach to know you've been in the trenches that your clients might have to get to or have been through or struggle with. And so it empowers you with a degree of empathy, compassion, but also drive to push them, because you know it can be done. And I think sometimes you get coaches that don't know the trenches, but then you've got some people in the trenches that don't know coaching. So it's such a unique perspective to have this, I guess, envelope of experience and knowledge.
It's cool, and at the same time, it's hard, because I feel like, especially like from a business standpoint, it's really easy for someone who is a coach and entrepreneur to go all in on the coaching entrepreneur be awesome at it, right? Mm-hmm. It's really easy as an athlete to fully fixate on being the best athlete you can be, and kind of take everything else out. I feel like every day, and probably multiple times per year, as I like kind of switch roles and like in season, off season, things like that, I feel like I have an identity crisis about like, what am I doing with myself kind of all the time, because as far as I know, there's not really anyone else that does what I do the way that I do it. I love that. And at the same time, it's like not knowing how to do things has really held me back professionally. Not in a bad way. It's just, I think we look to people who have gone before us and kind of like those tracks that we can follow in. And I keep looking for that and realizing like, sis, you're going to have to make those tracks yourself. Yeah. And that's a challenge.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's like, it's a very daunting concept that, you know, because there's always other physiotherapists, right? There's always other doctors in physical therapy, manual manipulation, and things like that. But to do what you do in a way that you do it, like I've experienced it firsthand. I approached you, God, maybe an hour before I was supposed to go on stage at the Catalyst Summit, Coach Catalyst Summit, and said, "Look, my back from this travel, like
Right.
Cav has jam packed our schedule, and I've just said yes to everything, and my body is so jacked up right now. But I've said no. I didn't fly here to say no to experiences. So I'm like, can you help me get through this next 2 hours?" And you're just like, yeah, we're going to go over here and go through this, and this, and these are how these things work. We're going to look at intertwining this and connecting this, and how the ribs, work here and stabilize here, and then contraction to the
It
pelvis.
wouldn't be a session with me if I didn't talk about the ribcage.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was
Kind of,
going to
kind of kidding, kind of serious. Something I want to talk on more this year. Yeah, I felt bad during that session too, because it's like, that was one of those times where I think no matter who would have come in and what tool they would have given you, I think the state that your nervous system was in, where you were getting ready to talk on a pretty big conference and your
Yeah.
focus was on that, I think your nervous system was just so ramped up
Oh
that
yeah.
there's not really anything anyone could have done to improve that much other than let you kind of get through it. And then after there, just dampen the response a little bit. But
But
I felt kind of bad. I was like, well, we're just going to get you breathing and see if we can inhibit your back a little bit and see, yeah.
that's the care that comes from your approach to coaching. I think your approach to therapy and being a clinician is that comprehension and care of like, okay, so where is this person right now? Where can I get them to ease pain or alleviate pain, but also try and deal with the problem? You're obviously not going to be my long-term therapist when I'm 17,000 kilometers away, but for that time,
You'd
you're
be
like,
surprised.
yeah, also that too. They're the ability to compassionately care enough to go, okay, we can do something. Let's go sit over here and go through some things and see what we can fix right now. Like there are some professionals, clinicians that won't take that approach. It's like, yeah, booking with my consultant in 12 days time. And it's like,
That's wild to me. It's one of those things too where like I know you get this because you're in leadership. So I grew up. My dad is awesome. He he did a ton of like leadership coaching and stuff like that, and so I always got to see really great leadership modeled. And I
mhm,
think it's made me a better coach. And when we coach, and I talked about this at the conference, like our role is not necessarily just to put a band-aid on and fix something, right? Like
mhm,
we need to align with that person and see exactly where they're at that moment.
mhm,
Not only see point A to point B, but be able to see past that for that person. Because
mhm,
right when you're in pain, when anyone's in pain, or when there's a massive goal that's intimidating in front of you or anything, all you can see is that thing.
mhm,
Um, Being able to set the vision a little bit past that it's a challenge.
mhm,
And I think like you can probably resonate with this too as a coach and athlete yourself. Like when you're in it and you felt it, it's so much easier to actually put your head in the same space as that person. And I
mhm,
think that until we can do that as coaches or therapists or whatever we're doing, as a consultant with some of the things you're doing right now, until you understand and take yourself out of your own headspace to actually try to like suffer with that person for a
mhm.
moment, you don't stand a shot at leading them to a different spot or leading them to a different place.
Yeah, it's you know, a lot of people argue, and I agree to a degree in the general population coaching space.
Yeah.
You don't need to be an elite bodybuilder. You don't need to look like an elite bodybuilder to coach body composition or lifestyle change. You don't. I completely agree. But when it comes to the extreme endeavors, when it comes to those outliers that are so beyond the norm, like we're talking like, 99th percentile, standard deviations from the norm, you kind of have to be able to explain it through experience because there's so little data on what
Yeah.
the extreme looks like. Like you can't conceptualize a Kobe lifestyle, a Michael Jordan lifestyle, a Miss Olympia life. Like you can't data track it. You can express experience and knowledge on it through doing it. And that's what I think makes a really effective coach to some degree because we know there are coaches that have been athletes that suck, but in the realms that we exist in, having actually been in it, been through injuries or pain or psychological limitations, got to the 3% body fat, got to the peaks of an off season, eating 6,000 calories a day, getting to those positions where it's like, this feels genuinely uncomfortable, painful, agonizing. And to most people, they just say, well, stop. But as a coach, you have to be the one to say, look, I know it's hard, but I've been there. You can do it. And that's such a relief as a client when you hear that your coach knows. and that it's possible, because then you can look at them and go, okay, well, Phil over here has done it. Why am I paying Phil then? If he's telling me I can do it, why not listen and do it?
Yeah. One of my favorite things about you, Ben, and this is something that I think is a huge strength of yours, obviously, with the psychological background that you have. Throughout every point of my journey as an athlete, when you spoke to me as an athlete, but not exclusively as an athlete.
Mhm.
And gosh, we've talked about this with Cap too, where like the higher you climb on a mountain, you realize that you're going to be up there alone, and you
Mhm.
have the opportunity to kind of go back and pull people up with you if they
Mhm.
want to come with you,
Mhm.
want to come. And this whole like 2023 for me, just for anyone that's listening, basically, I started prep in February for Puerto Rico Pro. It was going to be an 18-week prep. Puerto Rico Pro got canceled, which means I had a 22-week prep for Chicago Pro.
Mhm.
This isn't like, the more aggressive and the leaner you have to get, especially for women, those
Mhm.
extras are just, they're awful. I mean,
Mhm.
the women's physique division, if you're not coming in with striated glutes and dug out hamstrings, you're not going to place, period.
Yeah.
So 22 weeks of that was hard. Throughout a lot of that process, the second half of that, we didn't know this at the time, but I was dealing with an autoimmune condition that was causing me to have these like seizure-like episodes pretty much every time I went outside. If it
Mhm.
was hot, or if I trained too hard, or if I was overly fatigued, which if you're in contest prep and you're doing 80 minutes of stairs and 110 degrees in your garage, you're gonna see these.
Yeah.
And so like I get deeper and deeper and deeper into this, like every opportunity you're trying to accomplish anything hard, right? The further you dig into that, the more resistance you're going to
Mhm.
encounter. That's going to get harder.
Yeah.
And I felt like throughout that process, not only Chicago, but then even to Olympia prep, which was an absolute mess. We could talk about that later. Um, you are so gifted at understanding the multiple roles that people are going to play and speaking to that role. That's something Kath does really well. That's something you really, really do well. And I think that, especially as a coach, I would imagine that when you're interacting with your athletes, you're doing check-ins with them, I would imagine that you're not seeing like just them as an athlete, but you're speaking to all parts of them as a person. And
Mhm.
that's probably, if I had to guess like your superpower as a coach, I would guess that's it.
I'd take it.
Yeah.
I would take
Maybe one of the three superpowers.
I think like as coaches, as clinicians, right? Like, you know, I can imagine you're very much the same way when we're assessing someone, we're looking where they are, we're looking at check-ins, results, responses, whatever it is. The average coach, again, it's not a dig at anyone per se, it's not attacking any direction of people, but the average coach is looking at, the standard metrics I might look for, like did you progress your weights, how did training go, did you hit your macros or your nutrition? But we know that the body, in and of itself, does not exist in a vacuum, and no one part of the system is in isolation. So, how do you then not treat the lifestyle in the same context? The person cannot exist in isolation or vacuum. Excuse me. They have to exist in the environments that they are in as the person that they are, right? So, how can we then say, the only thing impacting you is my macros and my training and my output? That's not logically fair to the person if we're not looking at the global picture, regardless of whether it's injury, prehab, post-hab, rehab, whatever it is, whether it be prep, whether it be pre-prep, whether it be 2 weeks out and peaking, the person is impacted, and the behaviorists early in the 1920s to 1940s kind of got this right in that behavior is directly impacted by environments that they exist in, and those lead to behaviors. So for a client, if we're not considering what does their social life look like, what's their home life look like, what's their relationships, what's their work life, what's their de-stress activities, what do they do to wind down, all these factors that will then help us understand the person and go, okay, rather than me drop your food, I'm going to get you to go have sex with your wife. And 9 times out of 10, when I have someone, a male that's emotionally drained, and I'm like, look, you and the missus this weekend, you're going, I don't care where you go, what you're doing, this is what you're doing. You're going to come back, have a good night together, and then weigh yourself in 2 days' time, like you do for your check-in. I guarantee you your weight goes down. And
Yeah.
out of 10 times, that's what happens. And I think that's what gives us that ability to be understanding as coaches, because A, we've been there, but also we know that when we're there, that there are other factors at play than just macros and training. So then why would we not apply that to our clients?
I think there's a massive misconception that a lot of like the psychological aspects of, gosh, which hat do I want to wear? One of that, where the athlete hat, the coach hat, the clinician hat. I think
Move
there's
them
a
all around,
massive,
wear them all.
I think there's a massive misconception. I mean, honestly, that's made me really good at what I do. There's a massive misconception that all these psychological things are just kind of this like frou-frou science, right? Like, oh, like, mindset, or like,
Yeah.
oh, you think positive or
Yeah.
manifest,
Yeah.
like the new thing. I guess it's not new anymore. There's a massive misconception that that's not actually a powerful thing. But if you go and you actually look at study, well, from a research standpoint, we know that thought patterns are going to change neurotransmitter release, right?
Mhm.
Like we know that different thought patterns, different environments,
Mhm.
light of different areas of the brain. Something like the amygdala, for example, you get that overactive, you're in fight or flight for a long time.
Yep.
But on a practical standpoint, I've done seminars where I have someone that I know pretty well, and I kind of play this game with them. I feel a little bad about it, but it's kind of cool. It's a little like party trick. You get a little jazzed up right now. I'll put someone on a table and I'll muscle test them through a technique that I'm not like certified in. It's not traditional muscle testing, but I'll go and I'll test them and we'll test great. Like exactly what I imagined. I'll then go, and this is actually hard for me to do. I'll be really mean to them. I'll say mean things. I'll say something like, your wife should have married you. You're a terrible dad. I'll say things that literally just like how can we crush a man's soul, right? With words. And I'll go and I'll then
Yeah, small calves.
yes, your calves and your arms, man. Come on. Your forearms too. I'll go and I'll muscle test them after, and everything's shut down.
Mhm.
So if we're going to extrapolate that, not only from like the chemical standpoint of really like we are walking chemistry,
Mhm.
if we're going to extrapolate that not only from the chemical standpoint, but from the practical standpoint, those interactions become huge, hugely
Yep.
important. So every time I talk to a coach, it's like, oh, well, I read this article, blah, blah, blah. Thermodynamics, that's all that matters. I'm like, no, like we literally have not only empirical evidence from a from a neuromechanical standpoint,
Mhm.
but from the like practical. Like, let me put
Yep.
you on a table with me, and I guarantee you I can shut your muscles down.
Yep.
So it's just it's fascinating to me that we write this off as frou-frou. And I'm not gonna say that like, all we have to do is like talk nice to people or like,
Oh, no,
give
yeah.
them time as needed. Like there's a lot of science to the coaching too. And I love like nerding out over the periodization of like, pre-prep to the prehab phase and everything else. It's so fun. But I think the first thing that a really great coach does, and again, your superpower is like figuring out what it is that person needs to hear.
Mhm.
You're so freaking good at that. And I hope your athletes know how good you are at that, how lucky they are to have that.
I think it's like, even to go back to your point on the neuro side, one of the things, like, there's a recent study that just got published about doom scrolling during sets actually impacts and decreases force velocity.
I
And
saw that.
like
I
that was
saw
a huge thing, right? Like everyone's like, "Oh, this amazing study came out." Like it's showing you stop using your social media during training. The funny part is, this is just a more specified, detailed response to what we already understood, which is that
right.
perception impacts training capacity. So we know that like someone who's highly anxious is more likely to reach or achieve muscle fatigue or closer to RAR perception. So like your RPE is going to be higher before your actual muscular fatigue exists or is present. So basically, in other words, to kind of put it, is that if you're not present in your training, you're going to reach your perception of failure faster than if you were more mindfully present during your training. So what it's saying to us is that psychologically, you're going to feel more taxed or fatigued faster, which we know, if the effective rep model is kind of like the discussion point, which it is at the moment, is that if we need to get at least 2 reps close to failure, then that's where we need to be to generate the most amount of hypertrophy without fatiguing and more unnecessarily. Then you're not getting close enough to the proximity of failure because your perception isn't in your training. So psychologically, you're not there, which then results in physiologically you're not getting the result. So
You're
that's
basically arbitrarily putting a limitation on, or a false limitation upon yourself.
exactly, and that social media study really just narrowed down an already existing knowledge that we had in how perception impacts training capacity. So these concepts, like, now we're starting to get more physiological, I guess, or tangible results to it. Starts to bring people's awareness to how psychology will actually impact your training, your results, your lifestyle, which I think is great. But it just goes to show like how many people were not how many people, but a lot of people are very much like, it's training and macros. I'm like, yes, it is training macros, but, and this is where our model tries to take off, is like psychology exists above both those things. Like if your head is not in it as an athlete, if your head isn't in it as a coach, if your head isn't prepared as an athlete, like all these things are going to impact the macros and the training.
There's an interesting kind of dovetail to take with that too, where like okay, number one, why do we need a study to tell us this? Like, this is something we already knew, right?
Yep.
But people are still like on this like evidence-based hype train still don't get like under 10 years behind if you're evidence-based. Why do we need that study? But two, like if we want to extrapolate that to even just recognizing the idea of like a threat perception, where that's really what we're doing when we're doing scrolling. It's like we're looking at potential threat perception. Our brain is really decoding that. We could even kind of give an analogy into pain science here, where as soon as there's that threat perception, are you pretty familiar with pain science? For anyone that listens, basically, if there's a perceived threat, your brain will prohibit maximum force production. So a lot of, well, not only that, it'll also generate pain, things like that. So we often think about pain as input. And while we have things like nociceptors, pain is generally driven by all this input gets sent up to the brain. The brain kind of goes, I don't know how I feel about this, and we'll send a pain as an output stimulus. Super basic there. But really what we're doing is we're looking at threat perception. And of course, if there's a threat, why in the world is our brain going to permit all the things that have to happen for high threshold motor unit recruitment, right?
Yep.
So like we think about trying to stimulate, getting, 2 reps in the tank, something like that. You're still looking at very high motor unit threshold there. Why in the world would our brain permit the synchronicity for something like that if it doesn't know if it can go all in on that task or protect you and make you fight or flight?
Exactly.
I just like, I don't know. I don't understand why we need the science for that, but I think that's also because fitness has become very trendy. So you get a lot of people doing it because it's like trendy instead of because of the fact that you really enjoy training.
Yeah. Oh God, yes. Like bodybuilding in and of itself has become such a trend pageant that if social media didn't exist, I think the sport would cut in half, which is a sad state of affairs and a lack of love for training, which is why we get these people getting so offended now about not being recorded, not filming in the gyms. It's because you're only doing it to get the reach of your content. Don't get me wrong. Like I film in the gym, you film in the gym, but I film it with the intent of like most of we pay for our videography. We put out a month's worth of content every month. And in that, I answer a lot of Q&As and put out as much knowledge as possible. Like I could almost write a course based on what I've put in my, what would be now like 20 hours of YouTubing in just my training vlogs. The problem is that we get so many people that are just now doing this trend of training and coaching because it's become popular and it's popular to be evidence-based. The funny part is though, and this is kind of like a really good time to what we're just talking about, is that the evidence is not always present in how to coach someone. The evidence isn't always caught up. It's not always up to date. We know, like even in like literature, textbooks and things like that. At current, when we were looking at neurotransmitters, the textbook that we used in the lecture that we had just recently, they were discussing unconventional neurotransmitters, which were realistically, unconventional gases as neurotransmitters, which became like nitric oxide and carbon monoxide. And they were like, in the textbook that we were using, they were considered unconventional because in the late 90s to 2000s, they were just discovered as potential impacts on neurotransmission. But
almost like as a chemical byproduct of having those gases present. Weird.
Exactly. It's like, okay, so if the textbook that we're being taught is that far behind, then what does other textbooks and other data look like where, yes, you can be evidence-based, but there has to be that room for the hands-on experience, the soft skills, the application that isn't quite in the textbook yet, where you learn to, talk about the psychology of things. You talk about the socioeconomic environments. You talk about the psychosocial environments. You talk about your intermediate relationship environments. Like all these things that will impact your result as an athlete, the coach should be aware of to say, all right, we could drop your food this week. That leads to a high degree of fatigue across your prep because now we're pulling energy availability down. Realistically, do you need that loss of food or do you need to have sex with your wife? Or do you need to get a massage? Or do you need to go play some Sony or, play the Xbox?
Hang out with your dog.
Go to the fucking park and walk your dog.
Yeah, man, gosh, Ben, you and I could sit here and literally talk about like the super
I know.
things.
I want to get into so many things here. It's frustrating.
There's like, we could literally talk about like training bro stuff. But again, like I think training with you was maybe one of my favorite training sessions I've had in like the longest time. I needed that so badly.
Oh, that was so much fun.
That was God. Let me know when you're
to watch. I don't think we recorded that one. It was literally like after the whole summit was over, and I got this phone call from Smokey, and he was like, "Do you want to come train?" And I was like, "I've been on my feet for 48 hours, 72 hours.
My back is all wound up.
My whole body is just jacked to shit. Everything hurts. And I'm getting phone calls like the Merrick team and Danny are going to train. You want to come? And I'm like, you don't go to America, meet the Merrick team, meet Danny, and not say yes to training. So I'm like, I literally like to not give everyone a visual image. I was down to my briefs in bed, and Brooklyn's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "My body's fucked. Like this is like one of the last active days we have."
I never would have known. Like
And
when you showed up that night, you were present. Like you were there. You were
I had so
in
much
it. I
fun.
was. It's funny watching you train because as much as I think that like, everyone needs to go to this like high intensity like proximity to failure, and I talk about this with my husband all the time. I don't know if you've seen his training videos, but the man is literally like I've never seen anyone just be able to ride out linear progression in a true like point one RIR or failure
Yeah.
for as long as he has. And it's because of his overall recoverability and who he is as a person.
Mhm.
He's so well acclimated. He has like zero emotional trauma from anything. Like the man is like the most put together person I think I've ever met. Thank God one of us is because it ain't me. Like I'm as fucked up as the rest of us. I'm like, let me go like thrash myself. So I ended up just God, it must have been like a month ago. I had one of my like really, really shaked like seizure sessions. I couldn't stand up anymore. And so I was like, you know what? Fuck it. Let me do the leg press. Let me do it against bands. Because in my brain, I'm sitting there like, great, that's basically joint approximation. Like we use that principle in neuro rehab and stroke rehab to provide stability, all that. I'm doing like a 5 by 10 cluster against bands on leg press when I can't stand up. That's me, broken. That's part of why I'm broken. But it's fun watching you train because you're probably one of the few people that like, if I were coaching you, I'd probably tell you to leave a little more in the tank. Because as close as you actually get to failure and how high the motor unit recruitment is for you, you almost wonder like how much you might be leaving on the table. And that would obviously look at like your total weekly volume and things like that. But you're probably one of like the truly 1%, like 0.1% maybe, that train that hard. And for you, I know that's like normal, but people forget that. People, I don't know, there's such a fine line where those of us who actually train hard are probably the ones that maybe actually need to pull back a little bit. And it's
Mhm.
hard to say that when we feel like we're leading from the front and being like, no, this is what training needs to look
Mhm.
like. And I don't know
Yeah.
about you, but like I feel a sense of responsibility to move
Mhm.
that forward, especially as a coach, especially as
Mhm.
an athlete. And now with this autoimmune stuff, like I want other people to know there's hope and that you
Mhm.
can continue forward. So the responsibility of doing it, there's also that like, there's the angel and the devil.
Yeah.
The devil, do it. And the angel's like, hey, you also need to model stewardship of your body,
Yeah.
stewardship of all the things that make us who we are. Um, and it's really hard to walk that line as a coach, as an athlete. And I
Oh
think
yeah.
that if you're not walking it daily as a coach, like if you're not, I'm sorry, as an athlete, I think it's really hard to understand a high level competitor or high level high achiever at anything they do.
Yeah. Oh no. I 100% agree in the sense like I'm the first person to preach like the 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 biggest misconception I have in the research when it comes to proxy to failure and using that as a metric of intensity is, or in terms of like leaving some in the tank, is 99.9% of people don't actually understand what true failure is or feels like. So how do they have a gauge of getting close to that proximity? So if the data is saying train individual, most of the time we see train individual, there's no standardized criteria to validate what a trained person is. They use years of training, right? Like have you trained for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? But that we know
There's no qualitative data within that.
exactly like there's no
There's
way to
nothing.
quantify the training experience and neurological connection that person has with training. Time in the gym does not equate to training age of experience. You could be doing 10 years of something. We used to have the whole like 10 years to mastery, but 10 years of doing the wrong thing is still wrong. You haven't mastered, you've mastered being wrong. So just because you've spent 2, 5, 6, 7 years in the gym, when it comes to an approximation to training age for a trained individual in the studies, that doesn't always equate to that person knowing how to train and what training actually is. It just means they spend time in the gym. And so to me, it's like when you see that in there, we use training men to get to a proxy to failure. Most of the time, the average person that I've coached and seen, I have to teach them failure first so that we can work back from it. And that to
For
me
sure.
is like, well, if I can't be with you in person, go watch any of my videos where you'll watch that set crumble. Like I will go to, I know there's like that 0.5 chance I get that rep out, but it's also going to cause so much more fatigue for the next rep that it's not worth the next set. So I'll stop here. But that's like my assessment gauge is like, do I push this again? Is like, what if someone was watching me? Also, is this close enough? And then am I risking the set volume the next session or the next set? Sorry. So all those things are going through my head when I'm trying to assess my training. because I know that if I tell a client to stop prematurely because they're a new client that's never trained properly, well, they're only going to leave more in the tank because they're already training with leaving stuff in the tank. So to me, it's like you said, that high level of training magnitude is because I need to be able to show people this is how I consider training to failure. This is how I consider that proxy to failure.
I've had a lot of people that have come to me lately. I guess kind of I'm coming at this from the point, mostly just to play devil's advocate because I love doing that. Because that's where good discussion starts, right?
Exactly.
Also, hey, do you know what Buc-ee's is? Have you been to Texas?
No.
Okay, Buc-ee's is a Texas, well, it's a mostly Texas thing. So we just moved here a couple years ago. Texas is great, minus the fact that it's hot as freaking Hades. And if you see it, but Buc-ee's is that's a massive beaver. She said. Sorry. I'm a 14-year-old boy. What are you gonna do? I was talking about training, wasn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So just to play devil's advocate, I have a lot of people that I'm working with right now who hurt like crazy. And when I ask them, okay, like what were you doing before we started working together? It's a very long intake process. I have a whole assessment. I run them from the biomechanics standpoint, because if they hurt, my PT brain needs to pull that apart, right? And most of them are dudes, and they're like mid to late 30s who are training with the top set top style, but like low volume, high intensity style. And when I ask them kind of that other layer, what was your training prior to that? Or like basically trying to get a feel for like not only what their training age is in a sense of like how long have they been in the gym, but like kind of what you're hitting on with like what's the quality of that training.
Yeah.
A lot of people who are training with that like very in vogue, low volume, high intensity, because I was like, oh rah, they end up doing so much more damage to themselves because they're missing the caveat that the movement has to be performed with the intent of actually using the muscle. Which sounds like a big duh to us, right? But if you get someone on a leg press and it's heavy, even me, you put me on a heavy loaded movement, I'm not thinking about using the muscle. I'm trying to survive, right?
Yeah.
But what happens with that too is that if they don't have the prerequisite foundation, their soft tissues and their joints are going to take a beating. So I get a lot of people who like they have like wild knee pain or wild hip pain, and they train with intensity, but they have no ability to locate the intensity. And so I kind of feel like training with that kind of intensity is like, I wouldn't necessarily say there's a hierarchy, but there's a dance that has to happen.
Yeah.
And there's a nuance that has to happen. And even looking at like the changes that happen to the body as they train that way. So
Yeah.
I'll use a friend of mine that I'm coaching right now that you know very well. You podcast together as an example. Really, really strong guy, zero hip mobility from the year spent powerlifting. Posterior hip, like posterior inferior pelvic floor, could not expand at all. So he'd load a heavy leg press, and because he didn't have the rotational mobility through his femur, he's got a new screw home mechanism through his knee. So every time he locks out, he's got knee pain. He trained with intensity, but because he's trained with intensity that required so much extra stress via stabilization because he had no ability to locate tension, he had no business training with that intensity.
Yeah.
So I think there's a little bit of a nuance there. So basically, like for him, he had years of powerlifting training as a Canadian record holder. But we basically had to like reteach him how to train.
Yeah.
And he had pain in a while. But he was so married to the intensity that we had to be like, dude, hold on a minute. That's great moving from A to B, but what's happening in between there?
Yes.
Because you have one body, and whether or not you put the weight into appropriate tissues or joints, like that's going to tell you how you're feeling after a session.
And that's
in a 5 years of that.
Exactly. And that's something I think a lot of people misunderstand or fail to comprehend is the part of moving weight. There's a very huge gap, I think, in comprehension that when people come to the gym, when they start training, is it's just simply moving from A to B and basically get whatever it takes to get the load. Whatever force is required to get the load from A to B, that's a rep. And when we look at, even if like strength through hypertrophy, the idea is not to simply advantage the movement as much as possible. Anyone that is trying to really train, and it took me years to even comprehend this myself, is that even when we go balls to the walls, and I know I struggle to do it as well. Like I will not always think about it. Something I've had to really peel back with my knees and hips is that The idea is to make the movement as difficult as possible with the load that is required to maximize mechanical tension, not simply shift load from A to B. The joints are
Yes.
trying to move. We're trying to use the muscle to move the joints. And I think a lot of people get that caveat wrong, and they'll just go, oh, well, I'm trying to get strong, therefore I should move weight. Sure, that's to a degree correct. We want to progressively overload, but we want to progressively overload the muscle, not the joint, because the joint is going to wear impact. And the muscle we need to get bigger, which comes from mechanical tension as the primary driver of hypertrophy. And so we are needing to make sure that the movement that is happening is through the target muscle that we're trying to grow. It's like when people try to argue for the whole, like, a pump is not a good indication of growth. It's like, yeah, but it's a proxy that you're training the right muscle. If you have a pump in your chest and you're training bench press, you should probably have a pump in your chest. That's a pretty good indication that you're training the right target area.
I was going to ask you, again, this is kind of where I was going with the devil's advocate thing. Do you think there's a ever an appropriate period to not be training for a competitive athlete? Like, we'll just use me as an example, to not be training to failure. I have an answer for this, but I'd love to hear yours.
Yes, I do. I do think there will be contexts or situations where absolute failure will probably not produce the ideal outcome we're trying to achieve. And a lot of that will be depending on fatigue acquisition through things like prep, where yes, we want to maintain strength because we know that the strength required to build the muscle is probably going to maintain the muscle. But where we're trying to manage fatigue and look for longevity of the training, I guess, duration, simply going to failure every single set, every single session is going to accumulate a lot of fatigue and generate a lot of metabolic damage rather than maintaining mechanical tension. And we're probably going to see more consequences than benefits when it comes into peaking than it would if we, say, held a few reps back. Now, in saying that, how many people actually know they're training close enough to failure, I think would be the nuance to consider. Because if we say pull back in prep because it's prep and most people end up weaker and tired and don't want to go hard, that's very different to actually training to true failure. And so I think someone like yourself, I would know I'd feel comfortable saying, hey, I need you to ease off in this set here because right now you're acclimating a lot more fatigue and all we're doing is building up struggles and stress later on in prep than what we're actually going to benefit from. So I'd feel comfortable saying, look, you need to take a few steps back here because we need this block to run for a period of time rather than like you get injured 2 weeks into it. But the average person is a new first-time prepper. I'd be like, look, you could probably safely send it here because what I like, in my program, anyway, not to make it about me, is that I will usually use the first 2 to 3 exercises as the ones where I'm like, go. But then I will invert my complexity and reduce internal stabilization and move the person to an external stability standpoint. So they have that room to simplify, but also go closer to failure with intensity. More joint protective. So, simplifies that aspect and takes away that every single set is balls to walls failure on heavy compound movements. It's more like, yeah, a few compound movements, let's go hard. But then we back away into more isolated, machinery.
For sure. That's fun to think about the periodization there too. I usually, if I'm coaching someone through a prep, I want to make sure I heard you correctly. It sounds like you'll start with something where they internally stabilize them like a dumbbell compared to a Smith press, for example. Where I take that same example for a lot of my clients because you want them to be able to maintain sheer raw output, right? As much as possible. But even something like a dumbbell press, if you can take a heavy dumbbell press, there's a lot of secondary and tertiary effects from that, like stabilization, motor unit synchronicity, co-contraction across the joint for synchronicity that's going to carry over to the externally stabilized press later on, which will then permit greater higher threshold motor unit recruitment, greater force production, all those things. So I think it's cool because like inherently, like us as meatheads, we know this, right?
Yeah.
Now we're just sitting here like, let's talk about the science about why. Let me get my pocket protector.
I love it.
You're welcome for that.
Yeah.
That was almost as good as the cookies that I make. Just kidding. Yeah, I even think it's interesting too. So like me right now, I'm in a phase where I've pulled back my training like considerably here. Again, I'll share for anyone that listens that. So I've been in prep for, God, what's 22 plus 14? 36 weeks of the year. before the Olympia. And then afterwards, because I'm a massive asshole to myself, was back training legs the day after the show.
Genius.
I know, right? Like the things that we know better, but when you're an athlete and when you're the one in the position, I've never felt more of a schizophrenic because looking at anyone else, I'm like, God, I'm a really good coach.
Yeah.
So when it comes to me, people must think I'm a total idiot because I'm out here like, just being. And I trained really hard. I went back to deadlifts right away. I had intensity techniques done right away because I was like, fuck it, I need to be better next year. Like I had all of my emotions that I just like, I hid from my emotions and just ran straight into the pain and training because that's what I love to do. I have a lot of us are like that. Got some blood work back, and we always villainize high cortisol, right? But low cortisol is really, really bad too. Cortisol, dope, HA, all gone. So as far as like training right now, it's kind of like, okay, well, how can we nurture the ability to go in and actually just enjoy moving, get a pump? You can, because if you've been in that state, getting a pump can be really hard. Get in and out in something like 30 to 40 minutes to where it's not like, going and killing yourself. And I think there's a lot of physiology behind driving some of that structural change too. I mean, things like angiogenesis, drying increased mitochondrial density, all the cellular changes that are going to support you and your recovery throughout the higher training phases. And I think it's really important for especially a high level athlete to have a phase like that, even if they're not high level, but life is just hard and they've got a lot going on. Like I've got a guy right now who's a business owner. He loves to train. He's that guy where I actually have to be like, hey, can you not kill yourself today? I just wrote a blog for him where I was like, I don't want you in the gym longer than 45 minutes. You're not doing anything fewer than 12 reps on anything because I don't want you hitting failure. And I just had to kind of explain that, like, number one, we're allowing your CNS to not be so thrashed, given that there's like total allostatic load for his life is so big. But even just framing it not only as like, oh, we don't want to like break you, but being like, no, this is going to lay a foundation for you to build from that's going to allow better recovery, better performance, better look on prep. You're going to have increased vascularity and all the things that like, as athletes, we're like, oh, vascularity. I don't know. I think if there's one thing that I've really taken away from the last year, training with people, and again, like I'm around, like I see Branch Warren almost every day. I'm at destination. Like you can't be in that environment and not feel the pressure to train your ass off. Like you can't.
100%.
I think staying in that is actually what drove me. Actually, him and one of his buddies told me, they're like, Danny, you need to pull back. I was like, no, I don't. Fuck off. No, I needed to pull back. So it's always interesting to me. And I think that the more fatigue we get too, just from like a joint standpoint, we get a lot more secondary and tertiary effects from movements that kind of hang on to that our body hangs on to and changes the shape of our joint orientation. That can lead to a lot of different injuries too. So I always encourage people throughout a prep that like if you're feeling something is off in terms of like not just like have a little boo-boo because you're gonna have boo-boos in prep. But if you're feeling like there's some part of your training that's contributing to some downstream effects, it's really important to go back and look at that. Like if you train chest on Monday and on Tuesday you're starting to feel like, man, like I can't find my rear delt for my pull day. There might be a change in the position, the orientation of your joints that not only is like making it hard to develop where you need to develop and like shuttle blood where it needs to go, but can create some downstream pain effects too.
Yeah, it's definitely like looking at like the globalization. I think when people just kind of go in and train to feel,
such a good word.
Like we need to look at the globalization of the program and where it fits in the aspect of your entire year's periodization. Now, not every client needs that, I don't think. And like a lot of times, like I've got newbies that come through, I'm like, I just need to get you in the gym, building a love for training, building motivation, getting a result. But like when I get to those tiered athletes where it's like, okay, we're going to build up your best prep, we're going to build up your best physique, we're going to get to that point. There has to be a approach to, are we increasing your cardiovascular system so that you can handle the volume that we're about to implement in prep? Are you building a foundation of strength so your joints can handle the load we're about to go through in prep? But are you connecting and feeling the muscle properly? How do we implement this in training programs? And then how do you micro that down to layering out your exercise selection and simplicity and complexity, things like that? I think it's so important to actually comprehend that, where it used to be a lot of back in the day is just send it. Who cares what happens? Prep is just modifying your food. Every set and every session should be absolute balls to the walls, gash yourself and die. But pretty much, but I want to steer this conversation because we're just going to nerd out pretty much for the next half hour if we don't. I want to steer this conversation towards you specifically because you've got quite a unique level that a lot of listeners aren't ever going to probably get to. Like realistically, they're not going to get to. You're a not lucky. You're a percentage anomaly if you get to where you got to, and that is being one of the 12 best in the world at what you do
16.
in a skilled person sport. What's that?
It was 16, but I'll take 16.
16 out of 7.6 billion
Huge
people.
difference.
It's a huge difference. But there is a level of perspective here that, and I know what we're going to have a really good talk on if we fit it in, is the identity association you had afterwards, because it's going to be something I think a lot of people need to hear. But so we've got to the Chicago Pro, and that was right around the time we met you. Actually, I think it was the week after or the 2 weeks after the Chicago Pro.
It was like 2 or 3 weeks. I was full when I met you. We got it on video, and I was like, had all this glycogen sucked up. I was like, this is great. Pretty much.
But yeah, so we've met post Chicago. Because I remember Cav was amping you up. I was like, look, you've got to meet another meathead of mine. She's a really good friend. Because Brooklyn was just in her like midway through her prep, and Cav was like, she'll have some great advice for Brooklyn, but also you guys are going to hit it off. I was like, cool, can't wait. And then you rocked up just like, hey, I'm Danny. And Cav was like, come meet my friend Danny. Awesome. But
did I give you a dad joke?
Yeah. What's that?
So if I didn't tell you a dad joke, it wasn't like an actual introduction.
Oh, that was definitely dad jokes. That was like the reason why we connected. The point there is we go from a Chicago Pro and we head into your Olympia. And this is something I can't speak on from experience. And this is something me and you spoke about a few times over message, even in person, after we had a few conversations. It's a different level. I can only imagine going from that pro win to now come into what is essentially the grand final of bodybuilding. The Super Bowl, the major cup, whatever you want to call it, it's our thing. And it's quite a unique experience for you where things perhaps don't land the way you want them to. The overall experience is not overwhelming, but it's anxiety provoking, it's exciting, it's interesting, it's exhausting, you're tired, you've been prepping now for half the year. There's all these emotions around it. And, everyone just sort of thinks like, being an elite athlete, which you would consider that standard to be, there's just going to be this like happy-go-lucky, fun time experience. Like, oh, I'm an elite athlete for life. This is what I do. But there was a lot that went into how you got towards Olympia, how you got on stage. I think it was like 12 weeks out where you were like, look, guys, if I don't communicate with any of you right now, it's because I just had to shut down and get this done. And there's so much to unwrap there before we even talk about the identity after the fact. But I'll talk about that for me so that we can unpack a bit of that information and experience.
Man, I don't really know how to start with that because there was so much. I really seek to live my life in a way that points a spotlight towards enabling and equipping other people. And I felt like I was at this huge, like, it felt like a violation of my core values in a way to be like, guys, I gotta like shut up and get it done. But it was also like, I've never felt, I'm used to doing hard things. Like, I like the things that I've done, people be like, how did you, I don't know, just did it. This was probably the first time that I've really felt like I just need to survive. Like the Olympia prep is probably the hardest thing that I've done. And everyone says that, right? But like there are levels to this too, where, at Destination around Sean Clarita, I'm around, Branch Warren, and I see these people who, the way that they dig into their prep and literally nothing else matters at that point, I don't have it in me to do that.
Yeah.
I gotta be honest. I don't have the mentality of an Olympian.
Yeah.
I don't. And I'm kind of okay with that. I think that one of the biggest things that I really took away from that whole experience is it really kind of left me looking at my core values and what I was able to do in that time. And there are other layers to that too that I'll talk about in a second. But it really kind of made me think about like what is this for? And it's a bit empty where it gets amped up where it's like, oh, it's the Olympia and it's so cool. Don't get me wrong, it is. And like, don't get me wrong, sure as hell want to be back up there. but that wasn't for me. It didn't tick the boxes for me
Yeah.
as much like my clients
Yeah.
watching you do that made me think that I can do
Mhm.
more. That's
Yeah.
what did it.
Yes.
That is 100% what sealed the deal for me.
Mhm.
So I think that was the big thing, but there was a lot of other stuff that came up that week, just with regards to, not that week, that whole prep, but even peak week, just with regards to relationships. And you and I've talked about that a little bit too. And
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm not really sure where to talk about or what to talk about with regards to any of the Olympia prep, other than just knowing that, like, I'm sitting here as this, like, elite athlete, and number one, it doesn't mean anything. Like
No.
I can go outside and no one thinks anything of me. I'm like, oh, you have
Yeah.
nice arms. I'm like, cool. I bench press a lot of weight.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. I ate a lot of food and I bench pressed.
Pretty much. Um, like it really, I don't want to say it's meaningless, but the internal process that happens and not discovering, but really being able to be true to your core values
Mhm.
in the face of adversity, I think provides a lot of you have a much stronger compass where
Mhm.
if it's eating from your true north, you know it, and you have
Mhm.
the option to kind of re-steer.
And like, I think this is a very important point to touch, and a lot of our athletes and general clients will understand this when they hear it. Is this is the reason why when we set goals with our clients, we have our clients set goals. Before we do that, we have them establish their three core values as a person before the process of even establishing a goal. Because if the goal doesn't align with the values that you live by, and if we can't find a way to connect them, it's going to feel like such an incongruence and misalignment that it's likely not going to happen. The average athlete, or even like the elite athlete, can still grind through the action because it's like, this is Olympia. Like, this is
Right.
the thing that you grind. But how do we get from just simply grinding? If we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, a lot of people will simply go through the first four layers, never actually achieve self actualization, which is his pinnacle of what the idea of motivation should be. And so we end up with like athletes that, yeah, we know the basic needs, like hunger, sleep, recovery, rest, warmth, have a partner or someone to support you and be in a good environment. In that instance, sure, that's great. But how do we get to that point where, there's that self actualization inside the prep, inside the training, where it means something more to us beyond just us winning a trophy or a title? Because
Right.
statistically, so many athletes won't win the title, but you'll still be an athlete up there. So it's like, how do you get something more from such an elite extreme thing? And I think you really touched on it there, which is something I felt my first show that I won when I stood dead center and I got my medal. Hearing the crowd, where like we were probably one of the larger groups in the audience, and it was early in the Matic sort of coaching time frame, to have people call out and just get excited and like you hear them screaming for your name to be called out. It's like, fuck, like I'm the living proof to the people that believe in me that you can do something,
Yeah.
which is so far beyond me actually doing the thing or the outcome of winning. It's like I'm leading through example and through deliverance that it can be done, and I back my word and I live up to my word holds value. And I think you've kind of touched on a very similar aspect there as to how you made it feel like something more than just I'm getting on stage to compete for a trophy.
And I'll kind of frame this too, in that like the whole day of the Olympia for me was like about as disappointing as it could have been. My only hope going into the Olympia, honestly, was I just wanted to bring a better look than Chicago. I don't make a lot of decisions that a lot of the girls do. I work a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I knew that like I've only competed in bodybuilding a couple years. I won my first show. I turned pro my second show. My third season as a pro, I was like, oh, I need to like actually train for bodybuilding, not powerlifting. And then my fourth season of pro to the Olympia. So I haven't been in bodybuilding all that long. And in some ways, I think that really was like good for me because I didn't have the fixation that I think a lot of people do with like it has to be the Olympia. And like now
Yeah,
I'm sitting here, now I have that fixation. But
yeah.
that day was like my peak was awful. Like I it was so bad. Um, there were some things that happened that day with scheduling of hair and makeup that I literally sprinted probably about half a mile from hair and makeup to backstage, like goodbye leg lines. Didn't get to pump up. I was like trying to drink pickle juice as I'm like doing laterals with the band. I was like, this is not my day. But I remember getting on stage and really owning the fact that the only thing I had the power to control was my presence. And there
Mm-hmm.
is a lot of power in presence.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember going on and like, I had my front pose and like walk up and I had my front double. And I remember my first thought was that I did this whole thing and in all of the all of the uphill, like I talked earlier about how you want to climb up the mountain, and the higher you climb, the steeper it gets. Throughout that, I was able to stay in line with the values that are important to me.
Yeah.
And it compromised how I looked on stage, 100%. But had I placed better, would I have felt better if it was in violation of the things that are important to me?
Yeah.
And I talked to a couple clients after that, and the take home for them was that no matter what you do, if something is important to you, you're always going to be at a position where you have to make a decision. And the decision is either going to be in line with your core values or not. And if you don't know what those are, you're going to feel lost. You will feel so lost. So I love that you do that with your clients. That's something that Dave Tate did with me, gosh, in 2015. And I revisited every couple of years just to make sure they're still in alignment. But my whole company is based on those. I mean, my brand, me, is based on that. And one of my values is also making sure that I'm leading from the front and putting myself in situations that are going to demand me to be at my highest character when I'm physically done. That's hard. If you've been through a contest prep like you have and like Brooklyn has, and you're like, I can't put my foot on the ground without feeling like my bones are taking my entire weight because I have no fat pad left. Like when your fat pads are gone, that's when you know.
Yeah.
If you still like to still show up as that person that you want to be, I think that cultivates, I don't want to say that cultivates leadership, but I think in some ways it allows you to know that when shit hits the fan, you can stay to the guiding principles of who you are.
Oh, 100%. I mean, it aligns with one of my favorite rules from Jordan Peterson, which is
I love Peterson.
be the person that your family can depend on at your father's funeral. And essentially that is like taking upon that leadership role in a time where things are hardest and that you're able still to stand steadfast and focus and deliver and be there for the people that need it, even though you probably need it as well. And I think that's such an important characteristic of a genuine athlete beyond, like we all want to win. And, anything to win is considered. But is that anything going to compromise who I am as a person, or can I win in line with being who I am as a person? And I think that's such a huge aspect that will generally lead to people feeling incongruent as athletes. Even if you get there, it's like, okay, well, I've got here, but what's next? Well, you got there at a compromising of yourself. So now you've got to, now you're there, you've got to find what that self is. You've got to find how you have that sense of fulfillment or positivity or enjoyment out of the thing you're doing, because all it was about winning. But then you won, and okay, well, what next? Well, that's the thing. That's the joy of the game of life, is that there's never an end point if you're consistently striving to be a better version of yourself, but you know what that self is.
I think we build up an accomplishment or a task or a goal. We kind of build it up as this thing, but it's really just a mirage. I mean, it's funny because last year I joked with Dave, my husband. I said, if I ever make it to the Olympia stage, I think that'd be it for me. I'd be good. And I realized, no, it wasn't. And come on, let's be real. Bodybuilding is only going to be the short chapter of our lives, right? But it does allow us to examine ourselves internally and to make sure that our hearts are staying pure and right towards the things that are important, to make sure that our mind is staying sharp, to make sure that we're still in alignment with the things that we believe are going to, if you believe something, if something is a core value of yours, it's probably because you really think that it's either going to improve your life or improve the life of the people around you. And I think being able to do that again under stress is really different. But we build up these things as like this goal, this mirage. And again, don't get me wrong, I really want to make it back there so badly, and I will do whatever I have to do to make that happen. But it pales in comparison to being able to dignify, serve, equip, empower, and what you and I do with what you've been through with your back. How much hope do you bring people? With what I've kind of gone medically with the seizures, not walking and everything, what kind of hope do we bring people when we can live that telos, as Kat would say, to bring people with us? And I think that our lives, and we coach and we've been through the shit that we have, that's basically a way that we can kind of allow people to see past that, that barrier that they can't. You just get this glimpse. And I think that us doing stuff man, all I want to do is I just want people to know I'm nothing special, but I want them to hope that they can build to be something special.
And I think you just touched on a very clear reason as to why competing again for you will be so important. Is once you, the goal to me, I genuinely believe like true high performance goals and true like high endeavors are generally most real when they are in pursuit of something greater than the self, but also align with yourself in achieving. So
Mhm.
if you're able to deliver in a way or give something or achieve something that goes beyond you, but still results in the outcome that you also want, I think that is one of the most fulfilling aspects of life that we can achieve. In the sense, like, as you said, for example, for me, like every time I get caught up in feeling bad about not being where I want to be or like I'm not where I need to be yet or something like that, I'll reflect and remember that I was also hit by a car. And there's probably someone out there who's like also been hit by a car or who's had spinal procedures or, had this problem or someone even worse than me. And they're sitting there thinking like, oh, woe is me, I can't get it. I was like, well, whether or not I get it, I can show the next person that they can still get it, and that they could still go after it and that it doesn't stop at X situation. There is a life after the fact. And I think a
You
lot
are a light to those people. You truly are a light on a hill to those people, and they need that.
But the
And
same is for you. The same is for you in the sense of like all the things that you've been through, and you're still able to deliver on a way that you do, and show up as an athlete, and then be able to kind of live that life beyond yourself, where it's like, yeah, you want to win the Olympia, but winning the Olympia would be more
just
so.
I just want to make it back. That's it. If I can make it back there, I'll be happy.
But even that, it's still showing, right? Like it's carrying that core characteristic of you and those core values, because it's going to be not just for you, it is for the deliverance of the beliefs and philosophy you have around helping others or showing others or providing for others that this is more than just a trophy or this is more than just a placing. It's
Yeah.
it's a whole story of overcoming and stepping up in the face of adversity and struggles and setbacks, that things can still happen. You just have to make it happen. And I think that's
Yeah.
such a powerful tool that athletes forego. They get very fixated on I need my next contract, I need my next delivery, I need my next championship, Super Bowl, whatever. But what else comes from that? What else at the end of it? Are you going to feel fulfilled that you achieve those Super Bowls? Sure, you probably will. But will you feel genuinely self-fulfilled if you also look at it like, hey, from that money or from that reach, I provided for 100,000 kids to try and pursue something greater than what they were doing. Or, like 1 million people watch me and are now going to go out and try something greater than they thought they could achieve because I was a nobody who made it to the Super Bowl. Like that to me is so much more self-serving and makes the whole process of existing so much more rewarding.
Absolutely. I just kind of have this thought as I'm sitting here listening to both of us, and I think this is probably one of the reasons that I love talking with you so much. Is that yeah, it's one thing if someone kind of gets into fitness and it's like kind of easy for them, like oh, like they've always been healthy, and like oh, they just decided to start like benching and deadlifting one day, but it's another thing when you've had to make a deliberate decision to use fitness as a way to change your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for a lot of people, fitness is that vehicle out of whatever whatever period of desertion they're in. The vehicle kind of bring them to that proverbial promised land. And I think that we as coaches, like, we do get to be that guide for them, but we have to be able to meet them in that desert before we can bring them into that promised land kind of thing. And I think that's probably one of the reasons that I love talking with you so much. And I love talking to other coaches who've like, they weren't just like naturally cut out for it kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like you're probably much more of a natural athlete than I am, but like everything you've had to go through with your back, all the physio, the pain that you have been in is probably beyond what I would say almost anyone else you've ever met will feel.
Mm-hmm.
And so for you to be able to use that experience to kind of meet them and have that compassion, that's why you can be such a great coach. People so often use fitness as that vehicle, but if you've never driven that vehicle, how are you going to go and help them navigate?
Exactly. I really wanted to kind of steer this conversation. I know we've got a deadline here. I really want to steer this conversation to you at like.
I could talk to you for so long, dude.
I know that's the problem. I was like, everything we started getting into had like these like this could be another tangent of 45 minutes. This could be another tangent of 45 minutes.
Seriously.
The next chat I really want to get into is the psychological post game. I think that'll be something we have a follow-up conversation on, because there's
Woo!
what
That's a
we call
long one, yeah.
Yeah, that'll be a long one. But there's a concept that, and I just recorded a piece of content on it. Plato considers the birth and death of the first and second self. So there's a person we're supposed to be based on the world we exist in, our socioeconomics, who we're around, who is the rules and norms of our parents, and basically how we're raised through school. And eventually that person has to die to make way for the person that we're supposed to become, which is known as our second self. And that's what our true self is, the existence
I
of our
love
true
that.
person. And it was one of those great philosophical concepts that really explains development and developmental psychology, I think, in that who you were born as, who you're raised as, isn't actually you. It's the expectations and the principles and the virtues, values, and goals of other people in what you're supposed to be. Then you unlock that, and basically that thing has to die to give way to who you're supposed to be next, or who you're actually inherently supposed to be. And it's really powerful in athletes post-retirement, in them trying to figure out, like, everything I did up to this point was this identity, and this was who I was. And then we go, well, who am I now afterwards? Like for you, it's like, okay, so who are you now after Olympia? Who are you now beyond just being the bodybuilder? And that's such a deep conversation that, well, like, we definitely aren't going to fit in 7 minutes. So we'll
I give you a quick TLDR for it though, because I'm going through a little bit of that right now.
hit me.
Just with like the medical diagnosis and things like that. And I think it's good just to tie back to the core values, because those core values aren't the what, they are the how.
Yes.
Right. So as much as I want to think of Danny, so formerly I was Danny the powerlifter. But then I had a whole slew of medical issues, injuries, yada yada. I thought I was never going to be powerlifting anymore. And I was like, whatever, I'll just casually pick up bodybuilding, see what happens. And now with the chapter of Danny the bodybuilder, I don't know what's next. I don't know if I will get to compete again. But what I do know is that like those core values, they tell me how I'm going to do what I'm going to do, whether it's coaching or having a family or volunteering or whatever that is. And I think that's why it's so important for people to actually have a strong sense of self. And if you don't have that, it can be really easy to feel lost, especially when dopamine is depleted and your hormones and neurotransmitters are all over the place. If you don't have that solid foundation of who you are as a person, I think a lot of people start to feel lost, whether they give up their training career, like, Guy Cisterino, when he retired. I was getting to talk to someone else who knows Guy very well, and he called Guy up and said, well, you need to be done. Guy was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And B just said, you're going to do the same thing you've always done. You're going to take the hard work that you put into something to make it the best at whatever you want to do, whatever that is. You just got to figure out whatever that is. And kind of knowing that about himself, like we get so dissociated from that as athletes, I think, and as coaches. And it's really easy to forget the very simple parts of ourselves.
Yes.
So on one end, it's like, kind of know yourself, know your values, knowing that's going to drive you. Bodybuilding is just the what. It really is just.
Honestly, like one of my greatest concepts, I believe, is what I'll teach in athletes, is that bodybuilding is a vessel for delivering the life you want to live.
Yes. You just said that so well. Can you say it one more time? It's vessel for delivering the
Okay, yeah, actually make sure I regurgitate the same way. I know I think the same thing about it, so I'm making sure I deliver it the same way. Bodybuilding, realistically, is just the vessel to deliver the life that you are the life that you want to live, in line with the caveat, the values of who you are as a person. Because that will show a lot of you when things get hard, when things are tough, and there's room to cheat, there's room to drop, there's room to bail, cancel reps or fail reps or not show up. There's the chance that there's room for that, and you act on it or don't act on it. It's going to say a lot about you as a person. And bodybuilding is the most extreme vessel that I know to deliver that experience.
You just nailed that, like, beautifully. I just like want to package that up and like re-deliver it to all of my clients. Like, guys, listen to what my smart friend Ben said. Also, he's really strong and trains like an animal. So go watch him.
All right, we're going to wrap this up. I'm going to hit you with 2 really quick questions. And then we will book in 30 more of these conversations, no doubt, over time. And we'll be linking up in America for sure. What is one book that you recommend that everyone has to read? Doesn't matter what field it is. And what is your absolute cheat meal, refeed, or free meal, whatever you want to call it?
Cheat meal, refeed. I don't have a gallbladder, so I can't have like pizza, burgers, things like that. Otherwise, I would go double bacon cheeseburger, all the mayo, all the barbecue sauce, French fries, all of it. Followed by cake. I'm a fat kid. Currently we make Mexican at home and I bake. So I'm not gonna lie, I've never had baked goods better than mine that I make at home if I go out, unless it's like a really fancy cake. Book that everyone needs to read. The Art of Self-Forgetfulness by Timothy Keller. It's more religious focused, but that's where my paradigm comes from. And that's why, like, that's the most freeing thing in the world for me, as someone who's Captain put herself under so much pressure.
Mhm.
It's it's really not about me at all.
Mhm.
And it's a very freeing thing when you realize that the gifts that you have, there's no pressure to use them.
Mhm.
There's no pressure to achieve a thing. There's simply a medium through which you can serve other people.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
yeah, I'm Captain put pressure on myself.
I like
So
that. I like that a lot. All right, you got to bounce. We're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. Obviously, we've been teeing this one up for a long period of time, and we're no doubt going to have more of them. But I will leave it there, and we will chat soon. And yeah, thank you very much for your time.
thank you for having me. And next time we get to chat, I think I will probably be interviewing you a little bit on your own podcast, if you're okay with that.
Absolutely, let's do it. I'm excited.
Sweet, I dig it.
All
Thanks,
right.
man.
Thanks for listening, guys.